More than 1 million people enlisted in the Canadian Armed Forces to serve and fight during World War II. Barely 40,000 are left to tell us about that horrific conflict or the lives they lived after the war. Liam Dwyer was an engine room artificer, petty officer in the Royal Canadian Navy, and he was stationed in Canada protecting the home front during World War II. An engineer by training, in the post-war period, he went on to be in charge of production control for the Avro Arrow fighter jet. Just days away from his 96th birthday, we're pleased to welcome him to our studio for more on a life well lived. It's a great pleasure to meet you and have you here.
Thank you very much for having me, Steve.
We have a lot of years to cover here, right? A lot of years to cover. So let's go back. I want to go back, well, to 1942. Yeah. Because unlike some of us who go to Exhibition Place to get on the Ferris wheel, you went to the exhibition grounds for a very different reason. Why did you go?
Well, I was working in a war plant. We were at Small Arms Limited in New Toronto, and we were making the Lee Enfield rifle. I was working. I had a line of women. They were from ages from 18 to 80 years of age. And in those days, everybody was on war work. In 1942, we were losing the war.
We should explain for our younger viewers, the war started in 1939, and you're right, halfway through, ends in 45, but by 42, we're in trouble.
We were in big trouble in Italy and Algeria and they had taken over France and Germany and Holland and Belgium, and they were starving the people in Holland, and England was in big trouble, and the war work was a thing to do in Canada. It was an effort. It was amazing how people the line that I ran on manufacturing the Lee Enfield rifle, women were from 18 years of age to 80 years of age.
But you were 19 at the time.
Yeah, I was getting close to being drafted. I didn't want to, it's not that I didn't want to serve. I didn't want to be in the Army. I had never seen the sea, but I had a hankering to get to the sea.
Well, can we show you a picture? You look at that, where's that? Look at the wall right over there. Yeah. That's you in your Navy uniform, looking very spiffy, I have to say.
Oh, yes.
So you went down to the X to enlist, and why did you want to serve in the Navy specifically?
It was when I was in high school, you know, you get wrapped up in different books, and they become a passion to read. Horatio Hornblower was my hero, but he was, you know, sailing in those days, and to look at these battleships sailing the ocean, you know, with those monstrous guns on them and the huge steel vessels traveling around the world, it gives you the excitement, you know, that you want to be there. And,
well, the title that you had, and I have to confess, I'd never heard of this title before. You were an engine room artificer.
Yeah.
What is that?
Artificer. You have to know all the skills of running a ship. There are pumps and huge steam engines, boilers, all kinds of things. You have to make fresh water at sea, and
so you had to know the guts of the ship really well.
You had to know every thing on the ship. You had to. We took the engine room artificer took the fighting vessel to the area that was requiring the attack. That the captain of the ship would form his attack plan, and we had to take the vessel. We had to speed it up to the point where, or stop engines, or prepare to ram a ship, or we had to get the vessel up to a certain speed before we could drop depth charges, because the depth charges was such a concussion that it would blow our ship up in the air too. So we had to get it up to the proper RPM. You know, and,
so you could drop it and then get the hell out of there.
And get the hell out of the way. And hope that there was a...
Now, look at the wall again, because I want to show you another picture here.
Oh, yes.
This is the Hmcs Sarnia, and let's zoom in, and you're in there somewhere. There you are.
I'm just above that gentleman there.
There you are.
There I am, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That ship was a minesweeper.
Yes, it was.
And you were stationed off the coast of Halifax and Newfoundland and Labrador. You were actually, as opposed to going overseas, your job was defend Canada, right?
The Germans had a very large submarine that they stored mines on. And they seeded mines in the Grand Banks just off Newfoundland and Halifax. These mines were what they call a magnetic mine. A vessel traveling through the lines of force that surround the Earth. Go back to your chemistry where you put a needle on water and it gradually went to a magnetic north.
Yes.
These mines were set that the vessel, the steel vessel, traveling through the lines of force that surround the Earth, became giant magnets. They would travel above the water. These mines were anchored to the bottom and a cable up. They'd be about 9 feet below the surface. This magnet of a ship would come over it. It would release, come up, hit the middle of the ship, and blow it to Kingdom Come. And if you see, there's pictures of the Queen Mary. They had to degauss. Magnetism is measured in degausses. I think that's the right pronunciation.
Okay. I'm not going to argue with you on this, so you're okay.
No, we're okay there, Steve. They have a cable all the way around the ship to neutralize the ship. After a while, they embedded that cable in the ships. But the Germans were smart. They had a mine that the 3 ships would go over, and the 4th ship, they'd get it. You know? And one incident, we were sweeping mines off Newfie, and we swept up about 12 or 15, I can't remember the exact count. But they sent a guy over from Britain, from the Royal Navy. They thought the Germans had invented a new mine. And they asked us, we had to sweep up a mine. So we brought a mine aboard. Gingerly, we had mattresses all over the quarterdeck. But as we headed for Newfoundland to St. John, the sea got rough, and the captain mustered everybody forward of the bridge. Only the people that were necessary for the watch. And I was the youngest petty officer on board, so the chief said, Liam, you go down in the engine room, and I'll give you an oiler, and we'll put a stoker in number 1 stokehold and one in number 2. And he said, if anything happens, Liam, I'll make sure you get mentioned in dispatches.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought, that's not too bad. You know?
Not too bad. He's basically sending you to your death.
Then I got thinking, I'm going to have to be gone to glory before.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Well, so just to complete the story, the mine did not go off on the ship.
No, we brought it into port. It was strange how we brought it in.
Did you ever have a mine go off?
When they came to the surface, we dragged a buoy, a bladder with 2 electrical connections on it, and had a magnetic field in between it, and dragged this over the surface of the ocean. And it would trigger the mine to come up.
I see.
And we would destroy it with gunfire.
Gotcha. Now, again, you're in Atlantic Canada.
Yes.
How close, to your knowledge, did any of the Axis powers, so Germany, Italy, Japan, how close did anybody get to Canada's shores? Well,
I know I have a good friend, Werner Hirschmann. He was in the German Navy, and he was a engineering officer in the German Navy, and he swears that no vessel landed on Canadian shores.
Or got close?
Oh, they came close. They came very close up to St. Lawrence.
Did you ever see any?
No, I never saw after the war, I saw it.
Yeah.
Not during the war, no.
But during the war, they had German U-boats come up through the St. Lawrence River?
Oh, hell, they knocked off 3 or 4 ships right off Quebec City. and the Gaspé.
That's a big...
In fact, they landed a guy there off one of these ships, but he had out-of-date $2 bills. And this is the only way they caught him.
Huh. Okay, I'm going to show you another picture, okay?
Okay.
Let's look at the wall again. This is the HMCS Esquimalt.
That's right, yes.
What happened to it on April 16th, 1945, early in the morning?
Okay. This is 6:30 in the morning.
Okay.
We're to meet at the mouth of the harbor. There's a convoy coming out, and we have to sweep for the convoy. That sweeping means that we do an anti-submarine detection, sweeping ahead of the convoy.
And you say at the harbor, this is Halifax Harbor?
This is Halifax Harbor.
Okay.
They assembled the convoys in Bedford Basin, the biggest basin in the world. We were to meet the Esquimalt there at 8 o'clock in the morning. It didn't show. And our captain got antsy about it, and he told the Captain D ashore that he was going to look for the Esquimalt, and he called in another ship to take our position. And we started to look for the Esquimalt. And at about 9:30 in the morning, we picked up a sub, and we dropped 7 depth charges, and we lost it. And
we lost it, meaning you got him, or he took off?
No, he avoided us.
Got it.
We continued to look for him, at the same time looking for Esquimalt, and then we were getting more anxious. Our lookout saw what we thought was the conning tower of a sub, and the captain called for ramming. When they got closer, they realized it was Carly floats, and there were survivors in the Carly floats.
So this was the wreckage of the Esquimalt?
Yeah, it was torpedoed at 8:30 in the morning. Steve, I'd like you to imagine a room about 20 by 20 with maybe 15 or 20 men in it, in their hammocks at 6:30 in the morning. They're getting ready to get up and have breakfast and go on watch. The torpedo slams into the starboard stern of the ship. The ship lists to starboard. The lights go out. It's perfectly black in there. Everybody is coming out of their hammocks, trying to get up a gangway that's 4 feet wide. The ship is listing and going down, turning on its side, trying to climb up a ladder that's on its side. The ship went down in 4 minutes.
It sank in 4 minutes,
Yeah.
that huge ship.
Took 44 men with it.
44 out of 74 aboard.
Yeah.
More than half.
Yeah.
But you rescued some, right?
Well, some got out.
There's a picture, incidentally, Mr. Dwyer, of some of the folks you rescued.
Yeah, we're taking them off the ship there. You notice?
Yep.
You notice see the guy with the beard on the left there?
Okay.
He's the only medical man on our ship.
Now, what kind of condition were these men in, having
They
been...
were terrible.
Well,
They
I
were
was going to
terrible.
say, I mean, stuck floating in the water for hours, waiting, waiting.
The water was 38 degrees.
Oof.
And these Carly floats are a big donut, and they'll seat maybe 12, 15 people. But the roll of the sea, these men were losing their strength, and they'd as the sea rolled, they would fall into the water and pass out. And there wasn't enough room in the floats for these guys, and there were ropes around the Carly float, and the guys would hang on to that, but the hypothermia would take over. And hypothermia is a thing that it puts you to sleep,
I want to ask you about May 8th, 1945, VE Day.
Yeah.
Do you remember where you were?
I was at sea.
You were at sea.
Yeah.
How did you get the news?
There was a rumor a week before. People went nuts. They thought the war was over, and it wasn't. And at 8:30 in the morning, the signal came down that Eisenhower was signing the declaration.
The Supreme Allied Commander, Dwight Eisenhower.
The captain said, splice the main brace, which gave us a double ration of rum. And it was strange. You would think that we'd be dancing around, hugging each other and all. But, you know, there's 16 men in our mess, chiefs and petty officers. And we just sat there and talked, you know. And some bragged about going home and my uncle had a big business. He's going to give me a job, and I'm going to write a book, and, you know, and all of this. But there's some people just sat there and thank God, you know.
How long before you got back to shore and became a civilian?
We were 5 days. They left us out there.
For another 5 days?
But because the riots came in Halifax. And the head people in the armed services in Halifax made the stupidest move ever by saying, shut everything down. Halifax had seen more of the war than any city in Canada. Mm-hmm. You know, the people going overseas, now they're coming back, the wounded, and they wanted to celebrate, and they closed the liquor stores, they closed everything.
So people rioted.
And one liquor store got broken into, and that set off a grass fire that just, it was conflagration.
Now, I do recall you saying a few minutes ago about a man with a chest full of medals. And I can't help but notice you're a man with a chest full of medals, too. You want to take us through those? Can you tell us what those are for?
This medal is North Atlantic Star. This is 90 days in the North Atlantic in the war zone. The second one is a 1 year at sea in a war zone. The third is the volunteer medal, and if you see the bar here, that indicates that I volunteered rather than drafted.
The bar on your ribbon.
Yeah, the bar on the ribbon.
I see, okay.
And the third one is the Victory Medal.
When you look at those medals, how proud are you?
Well, what is there to be proud of?
You survived the war, sir. That's plenty to be proud of. Yeah. Think how many didn't.
Think of the men. You know, I lost my brother-in-law at 19 years of age. He was in the Royal Regiment. He's buried over in Holton Cemetery. And I lost a lot of my friends that I went to high school with, you know. They played hockey with, you know, the guys you remember. I lived in Kirkland Lake, and the regiment up there was the Algonquin Regiment. And it took a beating in Holland. And a lot of my friends were lost there. One of my best friends, he was a tail gunner, and he only lasted 20 minutes over target. You know?
I mean, they call your generation the greatest generation for a reason. I think no one can imagine today 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old kids just dropping school and putting on a uniform and going off to fight, going off to war.
And flying aircraft.
Right.
And navigating, and they took charge of ships. You know, some of these people were from West by God, Saskatchewan, you know. And they'd never seen the sea, and they were wonderful people. Take D-Day. There were 10,000 Canadian sailors on D-Day. 10,000.
Yeah.
Very few people think of that, you know.
Can I take you to the next chapter of your life?
Certainly.
Because there's lots of people watching this who are going to remember the Avro Company, which made the Avro Arrow, which was the best plane in the world of its kind.
Yeah.
And then, I think it's in February of 1959.
Yeah. Black Friday.
Black Friday, you call it. There's the picture.
Yeah.
They made them in Moulton, which I guess is the town of Moulton, which is in Mississauga today.
Yes.
And you made these things.
Yeah.
What was it like to be at the center of such an historic project as the Avro Arrow?
It's hard to explain, but along came a group of engineers who had a vision that they could design and build an aircraft that could fly at level flight at twice the speed of sound, 1,600 miles an hour. Who could believe that? At that time, NATO was very strong, and everybody was nervous. They were talking about missiles and what have you. We had a fighter that could be taken over by NATO and be one of the best in the business. Nobody could believe that. And I believe the people in Ottawa who had the responsibility of making the decision to continue to make the Arrow and the Iroquois engine, they couldn't conceive that they could do that, and we did it.
And I want to ask you, to this day, so we're now, what is that, 60 years later, how mad are you still at Prime Minister Diefenbaker for canceling the Arrow?
Well, I'm not so mad at Diefenbaker as I'm mad at the people who advised Diefenbaker. Diefenbaker put his name on the bottom of the sheet that said cancel. He was a lawyer from the Midwest. He wasn't an aircraft man. There were people who advised him.
So you're mad at
Poor
them.
old Dief took he
took the heat for it.
He took the heat.
Yeah.
But
now, after the decision was made to cancel the Arrow, they destroyed everything, right? They destroyed the planes. They destroyed even the blueprints.
I witnessed them chopping up the Arrow, the 5 arrows. They had a piece of steel the size of this table, sharpened up. On one end, they'd hold it up, and the end, they'd drop it like a guillotine and cut it in pieces. They loaded it onto trucks, and police escort took it to Hamilton to the scrapyard.
Did it just get you right here to watch that?
Oh, yeah, it was sickening. It was sickening. I was in the engine plant, and we held the engine for about 2 months. Some people were interested in the engine. We were using titanium that had never been used before. And finally, they said that the Iroquois was canceled. I took 40 truckloads of drawings and specifications of it and burnt them. 40 truckloads.
I want to take you to another fascinating chapter of your life right now. And again, let's look at the monitor wall over there, because it was almost a quarter century ago that survivors from the Esquimalt and you and your Sarnia crew met for a reunion. And what is particularly astonishing about this picture is that the guy who is the second from the right, you've mentioned him already in our conversation once, his name is Werner Hirschman.
Yeah.
How do you know him?
Well, I put an ad in the Legion magazine that at a Navy reunion, survivors of the Esquimalt to meet in Brantford. And I got a phone call from a gentleman, a very rich German accent, and he introduced himself, and he said, "Can I come to the reunion?" And I kept talking to him, and he said, "I have just come back from a reunion of the survivors of the Esquimalt in Victoria, and they made me an associate member of the survivors." Mm-hmm. And he said, "I was an engineering officer on the U-190 that sank their ship."
I got to see that picture again. Sheldon, bring that picture up again. You are standing there, second on the right.
Yeah.
That man helped kill your fellow Canadian officers.
Yeah.
And there he is at the reunion in 1995. Yeah. Did you have any ill will towards him when you first met him?
No.
No? Why not?
Well, I don't think you can explain that. I think it's difficult. Today, I'm out to get you. Somebody says, "Well, don't get him anymore." So, what am I going to do? I'm going to shake hands with you. And this is what Werner did. He just came and he brought all his books from his training in Germany, And we went over them with them, and he. This is 50 years later.
Sure.
You know? It's hard to remember what the hell happened 50 years ago.
Well, how did everybody treat him?
With respect, and he treated us. And he was very, very friendly, very friendly.
So the sense.
By the way, he came to Canada. He was a prisoner of war in Gravenhurst for a year, and he went back to Germany. He got his engineering degree, came back to Canada in '52, became a Canadian citizen, taught at the University of Toronto, a member of the RCYC. He designed the first program that operated the red lights in Toronto. So he was a great contributor to. He became a part of Canada, and he loved to sail. His home was on the island, you know, the RCYC.
Mr. Dwyer, I'm going to ask you one more question.
Sure.
Because as we sit here talking, you are just days away from turning 96.
Yes.
That's a pretty good age that not very many people get to.
No.
So it feels like I should be asking you for some secrets to living a good life. What wisdom can you share with us?
That would be a difficult thing to say. I would certainly not recommend my life. I didn't think I'd make 22. But
and here you are.
I just stumbled along. I'm one of 8. I'm the last one of 8. And my father died at 90. My mother died early, but I guess it's genes, it's life. And I was married to the same woman, excuse me, for 74 years.
My goodness. When did you lose her?
A year ago.
Oh, I'm sorry. 74 years married.
Yeah.
You know how many people in this world can say that? Not very many. Sounds like you've had a wonderful life, though.
I've had some wonderful people around me. And I've been, you know, any woman that would put up with me for 74 years must have a wonderful place in heaven.
Amen to that.
Amen to that.
You know, it's a great pleasure to meet you, and I'm so glad you could spare some time for us and take us through such dramatic moments in your life. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
It's a great pleasure to meet you. That's Liam Dwyer, former engine room artificer, petty officer in the Royal Canadian Navy. Thanks so much, Mr. Dwyer. Great to meet you.
Thank you, Steve.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.